the Relearn program by APA Insights. So today you're joining our webinar Renewables in West Africa, in which our two speakers, Jean-Jacques Ngono, Managing Partner at Fina Green, and Frederick Ken Appiah, the Chief Program Officer of Renewable Energy at the Energy Commission in Ghana, will be telling us all about the renewable energy markets in West Africa. So, before we start, I'd like to remind you that we will be sending you the recordings and the presentations of these webinar, and also we will be we have a tradition in which you send where you are actually joining us from. So send us where you're joining us from. I'm having some technical difficulties here, but never mind. So so send where you're joining us from on the chat box. I'm moderating this webinar from Wrocław in Poland, and I know my colleague Araceli is in Madrid. So she tells me that you can hear me and that you can see me as well. So, but I can't see the screen. So, well, post where you're joining us from. And to start with, I will get our panelists to introduce themselves. So, please, to start with, Jean-Jacques, if you could very briefly introduce yourself and tell us where you're joining us from.
Thank you, Carlos. I'm Jean-Jacques Ngono, Managing Partner for Fina Green, a financial advisory company. I'm based in Côte d'Ivoire, Abidjan, and running the Sub-Saharan Africa activity.
Thank you very much, Jean-Jacques. And Fred, could you tell us a little bit about you, very briefly?
Okay, my name is Frederick Ken Appiah. I'm speaking from Ghana. I work with the Energy Commission for about 13 years in the field of renewable energy. I'm a mechanical engineer by profession, and Energy Commission is more of a regulatory institution and also a policy advisor to the Minister of Energy. So we do more of regulation, and then we license all the activities, commercial activities in the industry, renewable energy industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fred. So without further ado, Fred, if you could start your sharing your screens, you can deliver your presentation. And in the meantime, I'd like to remind all the members of our audience that they can pose questions on the Q&A box. So start thinking those questions first, and Fred Ken Appiah will present first on the renewable energy market in Ghana. Over to you, Fred.
All right, thank you very much. And welcome everybody to this presentation. I'll be focusing on energy potential in Ghana. My name is Frederick Ken Appiah, as I said, the Chief Program Officer in charge of renewable energy at the Energy Commission. And you can find my details, contact details after the presentation. Okay, so I'll be speaking briefly about the policy regulatory framework, the current development in the solar sector, and then market opportunities, and then any questions I will take and see how we can move on. In Ghana, just briefly, we have two regulatory institutions looking at the power sector or the energy sector. We have the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission, they handle mostly the financial regulation of tariff regulation aspect of the power sector, and they report directly under the office of the president. And they also monitor and enforce standards of performance, and then they serve the public interest. And then we also have the technical regulator, that is the Energy Commission. And then we are under the Ministry of Energy. We have 5 key mandates. First one is policy advisor to the Minister of Energy. And then the second is regulation of the electricity market, natural gas, and then recently they added renewable energy. And then the third is we develop indicative plans to ensure that at all points demand is met. The fourth role is promotion of renewable energy resources and energy efficiency technologies. And recently, last year, another role was given to us, the local content regulations for the electricity supply industry. So these are the key regulatory institutions for the power sector. We have a policy target of 1, having every community connected to the grid or have access to electricity by 2020. We are in 2019, so we have just a last mile to go. And then we have 10% renewable energy penetration target by 2030. I must put a note here that large hydro, first, we're not considering it as renewable energy source because of certain reasons, but now we consider large hydro as renewable energy source, just like every other country is doing. Our status of installed capacity is that currently we have about 84% of our communities connected to the national grid, 84%. And we are people of about 28 million. Currently, by 2018, end of 2018, our installed capacity was over 4,400. Now we are about 4,600. And our peak demand is currently about 2,500. At the end of 2018, it was 2,300. For renewable energy, including the large hydro, because we have 3 big large hydros, so it contributes about 37% in terms of installed capacity. But for modern forms of renewable energy, it is just 1.6%, totaling 71.35 megawatt, largely coming from 2 large-scale solar projects, and then the rest are distributed generation facilities and a few of biomass, combined heat and power. Current situations, before I talk about the market opportunities, is that the interest was so high in developing large-scale renewable energy power projects. Therefore, we signed so many power purchase agreements. Currently, we have, as I told you, we have installed capacity of 4,000. Our demand is 2,000. So we have oversubscription of power purchase agreement. So recently, there was a directive from Energy Commission or the government that the distribution utilities should stop signing new PPAs, just to make sure that we address or utilize, make use of all the PPAs that we have already signed. And also reschedule the signed PPAs from 2020 to 2027, so that we make sure that we don't take people out projects that are halfway, and also to ensure that we have value for money. Also, Energy Commission has placed a suspension on the issuance of provisional license for any solar PV or wind utility scale projects, whose of potential off-takers are the public utilities. So if you have a potential off-taker who is a bulk customer, like the mining companies, like the cement factories, or even an offshore market like the neighboring countries, then of course we still give license for such. Because of this oversubscription, there's also a policy directive that we are not going to sign bilateral or direct PPAs with any company which is not through competitive bidding. So there is a tendering process which is now replacing the normal feed-in tariff scheme that we had from 2013. You could see that from this trend, from 2013 to 2017, the trend is moving down. These are feed-in tariffs, but in 2015, 16, we did a pilot tender and we got lower values, and therefore the direction we should go tendering or procurement of RE power instead of going through the normal process. So just a brief one, if any developer wants to obtain a license, we have already developed the licensing framework, which is very, very simple. We have 3-stage approach where you register your business and then you submit your feasibility studies, including certain other documents, and then you can now submit to Energy Commission and obtain the provisional license. That's the first stage. The second stage is more of getting your site approved. And then after you have done your environmental assessment, grade assessment, and other studies, we issue you with a construction permit. And after constructing the plant, you submit commissioning reports and other reports, and then we issue the final license. Details can be found in the link down there. Now, the market potential, because of the situation we are in now, the PV market is now swinging from the utility scale approach where much interest has been expressed to more of distributed generation. So those factories with large roof space are more going into distributed generation solar PV than the normal utility scale 20 mega, 100 megawatt and so on. Because, as I said, we place a moratorium on the issuance of new PPAs so that we can deal with the old PPAs in the system. Also, the market is also swinging from public distribution utilities to more of large consumers, private consumers. In Ghana, we call most of them bulk customers. If your threshold is, your maximum demand is 500 kVA, or you consume annual electricity of 1 gigawatt hour, you qualify to be licensed as a bulk customer. Then you go to the deregulated market where you can deal directly with suppliers. Another opportunity that exists is net metering. We started net metering in 2014, 2015. 2016 became law after the pilot. Along the line, 2017, there was a little bit of an issue from the distribution utility side, and therefore we place a hold on it, trying to restructure the tariff for net metering. And in the course of the year, I believe that is going to resume, because we foresee, or we know for sure, that it is a driver for the PV market. When it went down, the suspension was placed on it, we realized that the demand for solar PV or the market just went down, and therefore we just want to bring it back. Another market opportunity is the off-grid market. And as I said, we are about 84%. So within the next year or so, we should be able to reach about 90%. What I want everybody to note here is, in Ghana, we've divided the country into 2 operational zones. So the northern has a private model called the power distribution services, managing the assets and other aspects of their work. So key thing is that before we can give you license to do any kind of business or operate or set up a power plant in these zones, we have to make sure that they are unserved areas. And also the policy for mini-grid has been that it should be part of the National Electrification Scheme, which we have been using over the years from the 80s to reach this 84% that I'm talking about. The strategy has been working, and that has been a public sector led. What it means is that the Ministry of Government looks for concessional loans or facilities, grant facilities, to set up the infrastructure and then hand it over to the utility to manage. And the same will be for the mini grid. And therefore, generation, operation, maintenance, revenue collection will be in the hands of public utilities. There's a role for the private sector that will come to that. But the policy direction is that if a community is located on an island on the Volta Lake, then the Volta River Authority has the mandate to look at the operation and also revenue collection, the management of the mini grid. And also it is a lakeside community or mainland located in each of the concessional areas. Then the Electricity Company of Ghana will take care of the southern, and then the Northern Electricity Distribution Company Limited will take care of the northern side. Another thing is there's a zero connection fee, and then there's a uniform tariff policy. In Ghana, there's a law that says that everybody anywhere, wherever you are, if you consume the same amount of electricity within a consuming bracket, then your tariff is the same, whether you are nearer to the source or away from the source. So what it means is that those in the villages or the remote off-grid areas must pay the same rate that we pay in the city. And that is a policy that we have been rolling out since the 90s or late 90s. Now, the role of the private sector, somebody may ask, is more of the engineering, procurement, and construction. So what it means is that government can engage the private sector to do the development or the setting up of the infrastructure for mini grid, handing it over to VRA or ECG or NETCO can also go into any kind of agreement with a private company to handle the management aspect of the mini grid. Other opportunities that can be identified is in the agri sector, where solar irrigation plays a major role. It has been picking up. ENDEV project by the German Development Corporation has been working in that sector, and other agencies. Another opportunity that we also see is the reuse and recycling of e-waste coming from solar system. It's an opportunity that has to be exploited, because the amount of solar the use of solar in the system is getting higher. Also, another area that we have not exploited is the solar water heating aspect for commercial, public, and even private facilities. It is an untapped area that investors can look at that. There's also the local content and local participation regulation, which has been passed, as I said, and therefore local manufacturing or assembling of RE products is key. Currently, we have about 4 companies assembling solar panels. The other component of the solar supply chain is still untapped and could be an opportunity. Very recently, we submitted the Renewable Energy Master Plan. We developed a master plan, which is a 3-by-5 years plan, looking at strategies, addressing certain challenges we've been facing over the years, trying to help us achieve the 10% target by 2030. So if you go to our website, you can find the whole document there, and there are, target set for us to roll out our renewable energy plans. There are projects and programs currently running that serves as certain potential opportunities for investors. And the first one I want to mention is the Scaling Up Renewable Energy Program, SREP. This is a multilateral being led by the World Bank, the Climate Investment Fund of the World Bank. And in it, we hope to do 55 renewable energy-based mini grids on these islands and lakeside communities that I mentioned earlier. And also, we're also looking at 33,000 solar home systems for the off-grid areas, and then 15,000 solar-based net metering systems for households and SMEs. We've done extensive work on these, and we hope that this year we'll start the SREP program. The implementation, actual implementation, the preparatory activities are already ongoing, being led by Ministry of Energy and the Energy Commission. The second one is the National Rooftop Solar Program, which started in 2016. The idea is that 200,000 rooftop spaces will be filled with solar to take the lighting load and certain essential loads off the grid and put on solar. We had some setbacks, and therefore we've resorted to, or we've put in certain application to the Green Climate Fund going through the process. We've gone so far and hope to secure funding to support this program. However, for the meantime, we've shifted the focus from urban centers to rural off-grid areas just to help achieve the universal access target by 2020 that we mentioned. Another key program that is coming up this year, by middle of this year, it will start, is the sustainable use of natural forest resources and then energy finance, the SUNREF program, being supported by the French Development Agency, that's AFD. It's a green credit facility that will be established to support renewable energy and energy efficiency programs. That serves as a big opportunity for it. We also have the React Household Project, that is a DFID funded program, and they seek to do almost like 50,000 solar home systems in rural off-grid areas, but it's targeted at private sector financing, low interest rate, and then grant facilities. This is also starting, and this year they've already started accepting applications, and private sector is moving to it. The last two I want to talk about is the solar lantern promotion program, where we seek to distribute 22 million solar lanterns in off-grid areas to replace kerosene lanterns that has been being used by largely in these off-grid areas. Recently, government has also declared government goes solar. That is government buildings, agencies, and departments going solar. This program has just started, and therefore certain arrangement, financial arrangement, and the implementation arrangement is ongoing. We hope to also start this year or early next year, we will start. Nevertheless, some agencies have already started going solar. You can find some having 100 kilowatt, 200 kilowatt, converting their carport to solar carport. So I just want to end here, and if any other question comes, then I'll answer. The key thing is that, I mean, even though the large scale solar is not moving, but the distributed generation standalone aspect and an off-grid market is just an untapped area that investment can go into it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Fred, for your presentation. It's been very, very insightful. We have a couple of questions already regarding your presentation on the Q&A box, but we'll get back to those after Jean-Jacques delivers his presentation. So, you know, without any more delay, if you could share your screen, Jean-Jacques, and then start your presentation. And in the meantime, I'd like to remind and encourage everyone to pose your questions on the Q&A box. You know, this is really your chance to get answers to questions live. So I wouldn't let that chance just go by. So, well, Jean-Jacques, over to you.
Thank you, Carlos. Hi, everybody. So I'm going to talk about renewable energy in West Africa, mainly in the ECOWAS region. We're gonna talk a bit about, a bit an overview of ECOWAS and the energy market. Then we will talk about the tender and the ongoing competition into the market. Then we talk about financing. Overall, ECOWAS, it's about, we talk about 15 countries for a total population of 350 million inhabitants, and a GDP of close to 600 billion, and at some point a huge electricity demand, about more than 15 gigawatt in 2018. And regarding the huge economy growth in that region, we have electricity demand that grow around 8%, and will continue to grow at that space over the 2019-2034 The market is still structuring with the help of international institutions, World Bank, European Union, and some other similar institutions. And the market is growing in terms of generation capacity and also in terms of interconnection between countries. And thanks to a West African power pool by 2020, an IPP company will produce in Ghana, for instance, and could sell its electricity directly in Mali, for instance. That will be a big shift into the ECOWAS market, thanks to the West African power pool, and there is ongoing huge projects in that sense in the region. And when we say the electricity demand is fast growing, the generation capacity will grow as well, and a large part of them should be renewable energy. By 2029, according to the ECOWAS, they plan to have about 38% of the production coming from renewable energy, solar, hydro, winds. Even if we don't have a wind opportunity, in some countries such as Senegal or maybe Ghana, we could have, we have some wind projects, some strong wind projects with strong developers ongoing. And it remains a lot of PV opportunity and hydro opportunity. I could also add maybe biomass opportunity as renewable in the ECOWAS region. Regarding the market, when we say Africa doesn't have enough generation capacity, that is a big opportunity for most of investor and IPP developers. And there is more and more competition, especially for solar, thanks to maybe scaling solar programs, the World Bank IFC program, who started in Zambia a couple of years ago. Now they just released the winners by the end of last year in Senegal. Now they are preparing maybe a scaling solar in Côte d'Ivoire, 60 megawatt, and they have some similar projects in Burkina Faso and at some extent in Guinea. But apart from scaling solar and where we can have very competitive price, just a reminder, in Senegal, we get the winner proposed about 3.6 cents by kilowatt for solar for PV projects. That is very huge for the continent. 2 years or 3 years ago, the price was around 10 cents. That is a big shift into the market. And basically, there is more and more competition, either from international institutions or ever at the country level. Coming from international institutions, we have the Millennium Challenge Corporation, who is acting in several countries: Côte d'Ivoire, Benin, Burkina Faso, Senegal, Guinea, and especially they just released a tender in Benin for mini grid projects and the SHS, and in Cabo Verde, this is directly the Ministry of Energy with we launched a kind of tender, competitive tender for solar and wind projects. And other international institutions is currently doing some market assessment in order to implement programs such as GetFit. with a great success in East Africa, especially in Uganda and in Zambia. And having that, we have more and more competition. PV price is going down and down, and that is a very good thing for national off-taker and for countries. And hopefully, I don't know how much down we will go in terms of price, but I hope one day we will reach the 2 cents in Saudi Arabia that EDF and Mazda reached a couple of years ago. But it remain a space in the ECOWAS region. If we focus now in Côte d'Ivoire, it's one of the largest economy in the ECOWAS after maybe Nigeria. Côte d'Ivoire, we talk about 20 million people and about 2.4 gigawatt installed capacity in Côte d'Ivoire. And most of the generation capacity are coming from hydro and from large hydro and from thermal plant that we couldn't consider as a renewable energy. But a couple of years ago, the government has taken the decision to increase the part of renewable energy. They launched a couple of tenders. The first one was 4 years ago, won by a Moroccan company. The second one was won by Biotherm, the South African company. And now they are planning to launch the Biscayne Solar in coordination with IFC, World Bank, etc. Côte d'Ivoire is one of the strongest electricity sector in West Africa, with the particularity that you are selling your electricity to the national off-taker with a CIE, but your client will be the state. You sign your PPA with the state, not with the national off-taker. That is a kind of maybe government guarantee in terms of payment. It is why there is a huge competition in any maybe renewable sector in Côte d'Ivoire. It might be in biomass, in solar project, or in hydro. And you have all the international maybe utilities and developers based here and developing projects not only in Côte d'Ivoire but also in West Africa. Regarding the financial market, how renewable projects are funded in the ECOWAS region, there is a large maybe a large basket of potential equity and debt providers. Regarding the equity, you have all the international infrastructure funds. They want to invest in Côte d'Ivoire because it's Côte d'Ivoire, for instance, or in ECOWAS because there's huge opportunity there is a lot of capital funds raised recently to invest on renewable energy, and most of the infrastructure funds want to take advantage on that in that area. You have most of the utility like NG, EDF who are here. You have infrastructure funds such as maybe AIAM or Meridian who are here. And in terms of debt financing, most of the large projects are now funded by DFI such as African Development Bank, Proparco, Electrify, etc. But there is more and more commercial lenders, such as local banks, who are maybe creating some maybe specialized department into their banks, such as Societe Generale. You have the South African Standard Bank who are in the ECOWAS, in Lagos, in Accra, and in Abidjan as well. You have more and more maybe international commercial banks who is in the ECOWAS and want to fund renewable energy projects. Most of them want to bring more, want to get involved more and more into the energy transition. Of course, all that financial has have a kind of criteria in order to get involved into the projects. They want to see the quality of the countries, the type of project, etc. The quality of development is if your project is in the maybe kind of national plan or something like that. If the project is planned to be connected to the grid, the background of the developers, if they have done something similar in Africa or in the similar region. In terms of IRR, they want to see projects above 10% projects IRR. They can go down in terms of DSCR above 1.2. And basically, they really have a look on your payback period, etc. Of course, most of that project will be funded as a project finance, with with a non-recourse financing, etc. In terms of risk, that is in terms of risk, depending on the countries. For some advanced countries like Cote d'Ivoire or Senegal, you will have a kind of tough discussion on the PPA, risk allocation, etc. But some other where there is less competition, it might be more easier to negotiate a PPA. In terms of currency, into the ECOWAS, you have the francophone countries and you have anglophone countries. For francophone countries, they share the same currency pegged to the euro as a franc CFA. That is more easier for financier to accept, a PPA in a franc CFA because it is pegged to the euro. But for countries such as maybe Nigeria or Ghana, it's become more challenging. We have to find maybe mitigation, maybe mechanism in order to maybe to cover the FX risk. And there's something, so it's something doable. There's an ongoing project in Ghana and in Nigeria with international developer who is moving quite well. And basically, it will be difficult to talk about the licensing process in most of the countries because each country has its own licensing process for unsolicited maybe projects. And for instance, in Cote d'Ivoire, you have a national development plan. In Ghana, in Senegal as well. In Nigeria, for instance, they work mostly with unsolicited projects by states, and it is the same. It was the same in Burkina Faso, but at some point they started to launch some tenders. They just issued they just awarded some projects, about 155 PV projects to about 6 developers in Burkina Faso 2 weeks ago, and that is very good things. And renewable is it's on tracks. That is all in terms of renewable energy perspective into the ECOWAS region.
Thank you very much, Jean-Jacques, for your presentation. So we've had a few questions on the Q&A box. The audience today has been quite shy. Maybe they have they're already digesting what they have heard from both you, Jean-Jacques, and Fred. So the question in the Q&A box is for Jean-Jacques, and I'll read it out loud. So it says, thank you for your presentation, Jean-Jacques, regarding the scaling solar tender in Ivory Coast. When is it expected to be launched by the World Bank? And
by the end of the year, we are currently doing the feasibility study, the pre-feasibility, and I think by the end of the year we will have something.
Okay, and it also says which kind of projects will be looked for, what capacity will be awarded. Thanks.
Yeah, it will be 60 megawatts.
60 megawatts. Okay. Sorry, I couldn't hear that. Is that PV you said?
Yeah, PV, yeah.
PV. Okay, great. Yeah, thank you for your answer. I was actually looking at the presence of private financial institutions in these tenders, and I wanted to ask you. So, are they? What does it take to get private finance involved? What kinds of projects do they like? Because I know that there are a lot of projects in not only solar but big infrastructure projects, and the private. I think the private financial financiers are quite choosy on these projects. So, in your opinion, what swings the balance? What makes them get involved in these types of projects?
Is this a question for me or for Frederic?
For you.
Yeah, you are asking why private investors are coming in ECOWAS region, right?
Yes, why and what criteria they look for to get involved in a renewable energy project?
Yeah, they want to see first of all a good return for the projects. That is something normal,
Yeah.
In terms of return, something about 15% will be good for them. They want to see the government support for on-grid projects, and at some point that there is no maybe political involvement into the project as the developers. In Africa, sometimes you can get your MOU or your PPA because you are linked to some politician or something like that. Most of the private investors now want to be aware from that from that space, and at some point they want to see the quality of the off-taker. If the off-taker is it's financially strong. If not, what is the mechanism existing in order to mitigate that risk, because at some point, if they get involved into the projects, they will bring some equity financing, but they will do a kind of leverage. And in terms of leverage, we will go to the financier, and the financier will ask, we want to be sure that at some point the project will be able to reimburse the debt, the debt services, to pay the debt services. And it is a kind of thing they are looking for. And at some point, depending on some of the countries, in some countries such as maybe Mali, they will ask for if it is possible to get maybe a sovereign guarantee or something like that from the World Bank or from African Development Bank. It is some mitigation that will give more comfort. In Cote d'Ivoire, for instance, it's different because the country is is stronger than the remaining country in ECOWAS. And as you sign your PPA directly with the state, most of the private financier don't ask maybe a sovereign guarantee. It's yeah. I don't know if my question was clear.
Yes.
My answer was clear.
No, I think your answer was very clear. Thank you very much. So they're looking for strong return and guarantees to mitigate the problems, the risks they find, which are specific to each project. So it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
and,
we have a question from Alva. I don't know if I have to type the question, the answer, or if I can answer directly.
Yeah, you can answer directly. So it says, can you speak to the transmission grid development needed or existing to support the next decade of renewables development in West Africa?
Yeah, that is a good question. And, developing PV bring a huge opportunity and at lower cost for countries. But in the same time, it is a challenge because PV is quite unstable for the grid, and in most ECOWAS countries, the grid is very weak. for instance, in some country, we cannot maybe put more than two projects, 10 megawatt projects. And if you put more than 10 megawatt projects, you can have a huge issue with your grid. It is why, at some extent, some international institutions, including USAID and ECOWAS, started to work a couple of years ago in order to fund some projects, in order to reinforce the national grid in some country and the interconnection between countries. And it is why they came to the solution saying that in order to have a strong country, we need to create a kind of ECOWAS in the electricity market. It is why I was saying by 2020, maybe an energy producer in one country could sign a PPA with off-taker in another country directly, thanks to the regional interconnection. And at some point, the West African power pool is playing a great role in that aspect. And there is a huge project upcoming in Burkina Faso and in Mali. We talk about 150 megawatt projects, and in both countries, 150 megawatt in Mali, 150 megawatt in Burkina Faso, in order to maybe to be used for the ECOWAS grid, directly.
Great, thank you very much. It's very interesting that they're starting to see the great integration between these countries. But looking at the example from Ghana, Fred, would you say that the grid development is a challenge you have in Ghana?
Well, the grid development, I think I must confess that we may be ahead of many West African countries, because there's a regional line for the interconnection, and that is the 330 kV line. And when it comes to Ghana, for example, we've already done our lines. We built our lines from Togo border, Ghana-Togo border, to connecting to our main power hub, that is Tema. And also, we also string the line from Tema to the next power hub, that is Takrady. And then we've also, which is somehow ready. And then we have also done the line from Tema going to the north, which last year was commissioned, even though it's not energized. So in terms of the readiness and the great stability, the resilience of it, going at 330, has been will be the backbone for the WAP project. Every country has its own voltage levels. For Ghana, for example, we have the grid line being 161 kVA. But for future integration, prepare for the development of the power sector in the sub-region, that is why we move on to the 330. What may be left to be done will be the necessary at the substation level, how to handle intermittent renewable energy, especially solar and wind. For Ghana, for example, studies have started. The grid company has started studies. Other donor-funded projects are helping them to build more softwares and infrastructure, hardware infrastructure, to accommodate the grid integration. We've also identified that most of our wind potential sites, which is also intermittent renewable energy, is along the east of the meridian from Tema, getting to the Togo borderline. And the transmission, the 330 transmission line just runs just across it. So the idea is that that place is becoming a hub. There are solar projects that will be coming up there, and there are the wind projects that will also be coming up there. The idea is to break in, and then it can interconnect these power plants that are being proposed to be built along the coast on that side. So I think that for key thing we need to understand is if every country will upgrade its system to the 330, so that we can energize it and it can serve the regional market. Then it doesn't matter where you put any solar system or wind power system, where the resource is. It can be transmitted to any, it can be transmitted to any off-taker in any country.
Right. Very interesting. Thank you. Thank you very much. And you also mentioned something interesting in your presentation, Fred, that you talked about how you're moving away from, you first mentioned that your PPAs, your public PPAs are oversubscribed. And then also that you, the market, or you seem to be moving away from the larger projects to more distributed energy, either close to businesses to, why have you made that decision?
No, in fact, the truth is that is not the decision of government. It is the market dynamics.
Right.
You know, solar and solar specifically, the key driver, there are three: government policy, market strategies, and also if you have intermittent power supply, it serves to encourage more people to go solar. And also if the tariffs also go high. Over the years, even though solar, the price of solar is going down, the power or the tariff for the grid is somehow still high. And therefore, it's an encouragement for large consumers to save power and also to reduce their electricity bills by going distributed generation. The roof space is there. So it is just the market dynamics. And
right.
Also, as I said, it's also government policy that drives these things. Because, as I said, there was oversubscription of PPAs, and now, as we sit here, almost like half power plants are sitting down, not producing. So what it means is that we don't really need capacity. Okay, we don't really need capacity. And that has also cumulated in or resulted in high capacity charges that has been added to the tariff. And therefore, every business is looking for how to cut down costs. Therefore, the market is just moving towards the distributed generation. So that is the dynamics that I'm talking about. It's just a market forces. Everybody wants to cut down cost. And then the price of solar, as I said, is also going down. For the other PPAs, there may be opportunity, as I said, but any opportunity that is going under tendering is normally you would just go to the distribution utilities and then negotiate for PPA. But this time we just want to move everything through a process that will be free and fair and competitive, so that we can achieve the prices that Jack is just talking about. Some are doing $0.06, some are doing less than that.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So we've got a couple of questions coming. One of them is on whether the Ivorian and Ghanaian governments, whether they are in favor of encouraging distributed energies that divert consumers from the grid. So,
well, if I can take it, for Ghanaian government, yes, of course, we want to encourage that, because it will save transmission of power through long distances. It will also reduce the distribution losses. In Ghana, distribution losses, both technical and commercial, is around 26%. And therefore, in situ solar integration or distributed generation can also, address such things. Also, it makes the grid also resilient and then stable and then more robust for transmission or serving other people. So for us, we are ready. The transmission utility and then distribution utilities government, we are already, or we support distributed generation. We are encouraging people to go solar, even though, as I said, also the market forces is also playing that. Even if you don't do it, people are just running away from the grid. And it has also an impact on the utilities. It has a negative impact on the utilities. So we've sat down with the utilities a couple of times to look at business scenarios or business models that will help them to participate in this move from just large scale to distributed utility. Because no matter what we do, people leave the grid. Of course, if the renewable is cheaper than the grid, then they will move. And also to avoid any intermittent power supply, people will move. And we can't prevent that. So it is up to the distribution utilities to adopt certain business models that will help them stay in business. And of course, because of the regulated market regime that we are in, regulators have to also allow the distribution utilities to go into any kind of business model that they intend to go into it. So we are in discussions with the distribution utilities to make sure that they respond positively to the move from large scale to decentralized systems.
Thank you, Fred, for your answer. Jean-Jacques, are you seeing something similar in other ECOWAS region countries or in Ivory Coast? Are you seeing that more customers on the distributed side?
If we focus on in Côte d'Ivoire, you know, the government here has always think about everything need to be, everybody need to be connected to the grid, nothing else. But over the last 2 years, 3 years, with the emergence of maybe solar home system company, they are now thinking about something else. You know, we are currently finishing maybe a feasibility study for European Union for the off-grid, for the development of off-grid sector in Côte d'Ivoire. I couldn't talk a lot about that, but at the end of the day, by next year or in 2 years, we will have a new kind of off-grid market here. So everybody won't be connected to the grid now, but in parallel of the development of the grid, they will develop maybe a kind of off-grid legislation in Côte d'Ivoire. I think in the ECOWAS region, for instance, in Nigeria, they just launched a huge tender for off-grid project, especially a mini-grid project led by the World Bank. Led by the World Bank, because the national grid in Nigeria is still facing some challenges with some maybe, you know, the gas maybe how do you, the gas producer companies are pushing, you know, to have more and more oil and gas company are pushing for more and more genset or something like that. That is not good for the national grid. There is a lot of fight between the two parts, and in the same time, you know, World Bank want to see more electrification in Nigeria. It is why I think last week they launched this big tender for mini grid in Nigeria. In other countries such as Burkina Faso, Mali, Guinea, or maybe Senegal, they already engaged on off-grid in parallel of on-grid maybe electrification. And in same time, you know, there is a huge shift, a huge change in many countries. They are currently adapting legislation, and they are trying to adapt maybe things in order to attract more and more company in order to produce more and more energy. They don't care if it is on-grid or off-grid. They just want to see the population to get more and more energy. If it could be renewable, fine, but at the end of the day, we just need more and more electricity.
Thank you very much, Jean-Jacques. And I think with this answer, we're going to close the Q&A session and shortly the webinar. So I'd like to thank both of you, Fred and Jean-Jacques, for being here with us, and also like to thank our audience for showing up on the day and posing questions. Just a reminder to everyone, you will get the recordings, the recording and the presentations. So never fear. In a few days, you'll get them in your inbox. And I know there are a couple of questions unanswered. You'll be able to pose those questions to Fred and Jean directly on the email later on. And if they find the time, I'm sure they'll go back to you.
Yes,
so thank you very much. So any parting words before we go, Jean-Jacques, to the audience?
Say that again, sorry.
So any parting words before we close the webinar?
Yeah, I think if we have some developer in that audience, there is a huge opportunity. West Africa needs more and more electricity. There is a room for most of the developers. They are welcoming to come in West Africa at the end of the day.
Thank you very much. And Fred, any parting words before we leave?
Yes, I think I must say that there's huge opportunity in renewable energy in general. My focus was on solar, but in general, we have huge opportunity in Africa that we can invest in it, both on-grid and off-grid. Many countries in West Africa still has not low, but let's say lower electrification rate, which means that there are many unserved people and many unserved communities that think renewable energy can play will play a very key role. And that is where I think much investment should go into it. Now in Ghana, for example, commercial people are going for renewable energy systems at commercial rate, and it's about 25% to 30%. Okay, but I believe with kind of low-cost financing, renewable energy can be a key role in the development of our sub-region.
Thank you very much, Fred. And well, on that note, I'd like to say goodbye to all of you. And remember, there will be more webinars like this on our website. Sign up; they're all free to attend. Go to atainsights.com. and you'll get the full list of the webinars that we present. Thank you very much and have a good day. Thank you.